Have you heard this one? An older woman walks into a bar. She's in her late 60s, maybe pushing 70, well on the shady side of 65. But instead of a bar, let's make it a platform, maybe even a stage like this one. It's not a joke. You saw her walk in. You're seeing her now. I thank you. But as a woman of a certain age, I am not here to be seen. I'm here to be heard. In Western culture in particular, older women often feel unseen and unheard, on the fringes instead of part of the fabric of society, consigned to the margins, rather than being solidly in the middle of the stories everyone's telling. We're taught to be sensitive, not to make jokes based on others' ethnicity, their faith practices, or their ableness. But jokes about older women, even by older women, are prevalent. And the stock characters in fairy tales? Wicked stepmothers and witchy crones. And yet there are 28 million American women over the age of 65. We're women who don't care so much about being noticed as being useful. We're women who want to use our life experiences, skills, and network of relationships before we take them out of time into eternity where they'll no longer be needed. If we live as long as many of our parents have, my generation of women will reach our late 80s or even our 90s. But however many more spins around the planet we have left, we know that we are inarguably in the third trimester of life. Every expectant mama knows that the third trimester is often the most difficult, yet also the most joyous part of a pregnancy. New life is just around the corner, and we feel the weight of it, the aching and longing for what is yet to be. We have an urgency to accomplish all we can before new life arrives and changes everything. Now, women in the third trimester of life have a diversity of experience, tempered wisdom, and emotional equity that's of great value to culture and community. Our elder years have the enormous potential to be a season of significant fruitfulness and extended influence. Our greatest calling might be ahead of us, not behind. So what is holding us back? Where I live in western North Carolina, the historic Cherokee tradition was to bestow a special title on warriors once acclaimed on the battlefield who had grown too old to fight. The days of defending hunting grounds are long past, but the eastern band of the Cherokee Nation reserves a singular honorific for men and women of advanced years who demonstrate the Cherokee core values of spirituality, strong individual character, stewardship, group harmony, tribal education, identity, and sense of humor. According to the tribe's website, only 10 people have been so honored in the last 75 years. In 2019, it was a woman nearing 80 by the name of Ella Bird. Her special title? Beloved Woman. Now, the white settlers of the southern Appalachian mountain culture had a different way of honoring older females. A granny woman was an older woman who served her community as a midwife and herbal healer, and who had the unrivaled authority to settle family disputes. But here's the thing. Cultures like these that elevate older women to positions of honor are rare in our Western world. Women of a certain age, I like to call us wokas, often live in the shadows of younger people whose lives loom larger. Many of us feel our lives have been diminished rather than enlarged. Is it possible that we have fallen prey to the most pervasive form of discrimination? Ageism? Are we even complicit in it by denying or decrying or defying our hard-won years rather than embracing them as a season of growth? Author and psychologist Mary Pfeiffer writes that ultimately ageism is a prejudice against one's own future self. Age discrimination in the workplace aside, what constitutes prejudice against one's own future self? It might be describing ourselves by our diminished health and stamina, or biasing self against self by comparing our weaknesses with another's strengths, or identifying ourselves by what we've accomplished in the past and not what we're capable of in the future. Maybe we've let our previous failures define us, but our past performance doesn't prophesy our future potential. We prejudice self against self when we define ourselves according to what we lack, not what we have. I didn't do that for years. I did it for decades. I have loved to write since I was old enough to hold a pencil. And by the time I was 8 or 9, my mom was submitting my stories to children's magazines, all of whom politely rejected my precociousness. I didn't want to be an author. I just wanted to get words I loved out into the world. But as an adult, fearing I'd never be good enough, I held back for decades until a publisher who just happened to read my blog, along with about 29 other people, reached out to me with these life-changing words, "You've got a book in you." My first book as a solo author, released in hardcover from a traditional publisher just last year, the year I turned 67. No wonder I love stories of other women who began later in life careers. Anna Mary Robertson Moses, also known as Grandma Moses, earned thousands for her primitive folk art paintings. She started to paint in earnest when she was 77. Laura Ingalls Wilder, renowned for her writing, published her first Little House on the Prairie novel when she turned 65. Julia Child, celebrated for her culinary skills, though not her vocal quality, became a television personality at the youthful age of 51. Sojourner Truth was an abolitionist and human rights activist well into her 80s. What did these women have in common? They used what they had, not what they lacked. The Hebrew Scriptures and the Christian Old Testament tell the story of a widow and her children who were about to be sold into slavery to settle her late husband's debts. She cried out for help, and the prophet Elisha instructed her to use what little she had in the house, oil, rather than focusing on all that she lacked. A miracle of provision ensued. Maybe you've done the math of your life, and all you see is division and subtraction, fractured relationships and lost opportunities. But the Creator who endowed us with certain unalienable rights is the master of multiplication. We see what we lack rather than working with what we have, but what we release can be reproduced. Time, energy, material resources. Even that which we've lost makes space in our lives for something new. So we ask ourselves these questions. What does this experience make possible? With this loss, what gain? With greater years, what greater clarity for what is truly essential in life? The gift of advanced years is simply this. As older women and men, we are simultaneously all the ages we've ever been. Just as rings within a tree bear witness to seasons lived, so too we bear within our minds and our bodies the memories and lessons of childhood, young adulthood, middle agehood. We can lend strength to younger saplings because our roots go deep. We're oaks in a new growth forest, and the sap is still running. So we take this as our challenge. What does your present situation make possible? What have you gained? And what have you lost that can impart meaning to others? The soil of every season is fertile ground. How do we take not only the sweetness, but also, frankly, what stinks about our lives and use it as compost to enrich the lives of others? I'm the daughter of a farmer, and believe me, manure has value. Maybe it's been hard to take the long view because you're looking through the foreground of your own frustration with the aging process. Maybe you felt invisible or past prime or saddled with a resume that feels as obsolete as a computer you can no longer get parts for. Maybe you've been personally ageist, realizing that you have prejudiced self against self because we live in a culture that celebrates the young rather than honoring the old. Here are 4 things that we can do today to step out of the shadows and into the vibrancy of third trimester life. First, jot down 10 to 15 words that you would use to describe yourself. Now eliminate the ones that arise out of your perceived weaknesses. Second, conduct an inventory of your skills and experiences, including your volunteer work. What is no longer a part of your life that once took up a great deal of time? So, raising a family, a demanding career, caregiving. What have you dreamed of doing if you had the courage, the time, the finances? And finally, even if you lack 90% of what you feel a new achievement would require, use the 10% that you do have while actively seeking the resources that you need. The 90 will come. The intentional life happens when we learn to make careful choices about the future, even as we grow in maturity from the lessons gained in the past. So we step back, we take stock, and we gain the long view of not what we've lost, not just what's left, but all there is yet to gain in the years to come. Just might be your story we're telling one day. Thank you.